Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to call this budget workshop / special call board meeting to order, today being Wednesday, May 10th, 2023.
I don't see a present.
Our Madam Secretary, would you call roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Becky Chavez Luna,
Present.
Mr. Overfeld,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Not here.
Mr. Mesa,
Here.
Mr. Galindo,
Present.
Ms. Haynes, myself. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting was duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, we will have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We don't have a crowd here today. I'm used to seeing more people than this, but welcome those of you that are here. We'll start our workshop again with item 3 on the agenda, health insurance update. We'll have Mr. Colaway. Welcome.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Tonight we have Mr. Coldaway who would give us an update on our health insurance. And just give me a minute to bring it up.
Mr. Mesa, for the references, we do have the presentation under the tab, the third budget workshop.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I thought we would start with kind of a high-level overview of how things have been going over the last few years, and you've seen this graph before, but I've updated it for the end of plan year 2022, and then where we are for the first 3 months of plan year 2023, January, February, March. So you probably recall that 2021 was a high water mark of, and these numbers that you see, like in 2021, are per employee per month costs. So it's a way we calculate costs that takes into account any variations in how many people are on the plan, because that varies month to month, and gives us a more accurate depiction of cost over time. So that was our high water mark, and at that point, the board and staff agreed with a recommendation to change how we do your health plan, which we've discussed. The results of that are in 2022, our plan year costs were down by 14%, down to $764.69 per employee per month, and that trend has continued through the first 3 months of the year. We're down to $724.17 for the first quarter of 2023. So that's all very positive. So the financial results are definitely moving in the right direction. And in any healthcare plan, the biggest cost drivers are your largest claims, right? The sickest people that work for the district or their families. And so some could say that those costs are down because we just didn't have as many very sick people. And that is not actually true. The reality is 2022, I don't have that slide here, but 2022 was the highest level of large claimants we've had in the last 5 years. So even though our costs were down, we had more sick people. So that's another testament to the changes that we made and the strategies that we employed in 2022. So what this slide gives you is a breakdown of the three components of your health plan. There's the medical claims. That's what we pay out to doctors, hospitals, imaging centers for surgeries, office visits, all of those things. So we see that is coming down again from 2021, lower still in 2023. The second component is your pharmacy cost. That's the biggest decline, and you see those are declining as well through 22 and 23. Fixed costs are the fees, the stop-loss premiums, all the things that show up on your monthly bill that go into administering this plan on behalf of the district. So this is just the actual numbers reflected on the graph, but it does show that we are trending in the right direction. So that's the cost side.
May I ask for a pause here? Let the record show that we do have Amy Haynes here. Amy? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So that is the cost side of the plan. So there's two sides of any equation, correct? There's the cost side, and then there's the revenue side of it. The revenue side are the contributions that go into the plan to fund all these costs, and those are shared between the district and the employees, the dollars coming out of their paycheck to fund their dependent costs for the plan. So, there's that, sorry, that's the large claim one. I thought that one was before. So this is what the plan funding overall has looked like since 2021, since 2020. In 2020, we had a deficit of $855,000, meaning that the dollars coming into the plan were less than the cost. In 2021, it was a deficit of $2.5 million. And in 2022, we had a deficit of $669,000. And there's an asterisk on that one because in July of 2022, a decision was made to actually lower the district contribution going into the plan by about $165,000 a month, which if we had kept that funding level and not reduced it, we would have wound up with a surplus for 2022. And that's a decision that can be made ongoing, and how the district and the board chooses to fund the plan. It's not a negative. Those dollars that you reduced funding stayed within the district. They didn't go anywhere. They were just reallocated in some way to other priorities. So how the plan is funded is entirely up to this body and the staff. Our concern is that we know where the money is coming from, and we have confidence that you do, whether it's come from fund balance or wherever you choose to get the money to fund this plan. That is entirely up to you. But we're concerned about bringing costs down over time so that you don't have to fund as much, or at least not increase it. So this is what this looks like for 2023. We've done some projections, and these are just projections. In our world, any number of things could happen in terms of very sick people with very large expenses. All kinds of things can happen to change these projections, but they're usually fairly accurate. So we're projecting a plan cost for 2023 of right at $13.2 million. And the way you're funding the plan today projects a revenue stream of about 11.3 for a deficit of 1.8 million. So I've given you a couple of scenarios here these are just two. The options are infinite about how you choose to fund the plan. These are just two, so you can kind of get your head around what it might take. So if we assume the same projected plan cost, and this is in the second line, we would need to increase the district's funding to $651 per employee per month and leave all the employee paycheck deductions the same, and we would then generate about $13.3 million with a projected surplus at that point of $185,000 over the next 12 months. If the board wanted to share some of that increase with the employees, then it might look like this third line where the employer would increase their funding to $640 and the employees would go up in their payroll deductions essentially by 17%. And we get to about the same number. We get to $13,376 or a surplus of $180,000. The percentages are about the same today as they are in this third scenario. So right now, the employees are paying about 10% of the overall cost. The district's paying 90%. Okay. If we move to scenario 3, where we increase their funding somewhat, that percentage stays the same. The employees would be funding about 10%, the district's funding about 90%. I would note that the district has not increased the employees' cost in at least about 5 years. So that's a remarkable achievement. Untrue of any other school district I've worked with over the last 10 years, that the employees have seen not only a very low number for their contributions to the health plan, but steady. It hasn't changed and gone up. So that's a remarkable achievement for San Felipe Del Rio.
Sorry, Greg, before you go on to the next slide, just for any, if I may, Mr. Messer, for any board member that may be worried about that big number in red, when we started the budget last year, we have projected a fund balance in the self-funded insurance plan of approximately $3 million. So we have no, we expected this deficit, but we also knew that the fund balance just in the insurance was about $3 million positive. That's not our local money, that's just insurance. That's why we knew that we could overcome any deficit. So if the deficit is as high as 1.8, we have $3 million in that fund balance. So we're still gonna be about $1 million positive in our health fund. We did that because if you remember all the ESSER funds that we had and all the costs that we were moving over to ESSER, so we knew we were gonna be fine. Now, going forward, at the end of this plan year, we're only gonna have about $1 million left in fund balance. So we will have to do something different. The other clarification that I wanna make for any employee watching is that when Mr. Colway is talking about sharing the cost with the employees, he's only talking about the employee and spouse, employee and children, and employee and family. He's not talking about just 100% of the employees. He's just talking about those plans where we're covering people that are not employed by the district, rather they're dependents. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad you're explaining that because it's, yeah, that relieves a lot of pressure from us.
Yeah, and all very good points. And so this slide may help you to see it a little more clearly. So This first box says current contributions, and it shows where we are today and kind of where I get the numbers for the prior slides. So currently, the employer contribution is $543.77 per month. If you multiply that out times the number of folks on the plan, that generates around $10.1 million. The employee contributions over on the right side of that are zero for employee-only coverage, so the employees pay nothing for their own coverage. They pay $494.85 to cover their spouse, $252.80 to cover their children, and $752.15 to cover their entire family. And you add all that together, you get that $11,371,000 of contributions going into the plan. So the second option is, as I mentioned, to raise the district's contribution to $651 per employee per month, which will generate about $12.2 million. Leave the employee contributions for their families exactly where they are, and that would generate about $13.3 million. So that's enough, we believe, to cover the expected cost. The other option, which is the third block, is to increase the employer contributions to $640, but raise the employee contributions, as you see on the right side. So go from $494.85 to $580 for a spouse, go from $252.80 for children to $295, and go from $752 to $885. And that gives us about $13.3 million. So if you did that scenario, as I mentioned, the district is covering 90% of plan costs. The employees are covering 10%, which is exactly what it is today. So it's just a sharing of that cost increase. And, again, that's a board decision as to how you choose to fund it. I'm just giving you a couple of options you may want to consider. So we can work through different scenarios at your direction, but I wanted to give you something to get that conversation started. So that is not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, meaning we get to the worst amount of claims under our stop loss, which is about $17 million. That is highly unlikely. We don't expect that. But just for full disclosure, I need you to be aware that that is the maximum cost under your stop loss arrangement. That would be extraordinarily unlikely to happen. So a couple of things we're doing. One thing we're implementing as soon as we possibly can. We've talked about all the different things that we've done that has created this downward trend in cost.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
That's in the regular agenda, the next one. So we
okay.
We have to discuss what you presented, and then we stop the workshop, we go to the regular meeting, and then you're
Okay.
next again.
No problem.
No, I do have some questions, and I'm sure other board members will have questions. On the scenarios that you presented, which one closely would be the one that compares to, let's say, increasing the employee contribution to 17%?
That's the middle one
The
on
middle
this slide. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? I like the fact that the numbers remain pretty much the same. And
So
then,
do-
of
so do
course,
I,
the third
sir.
one, that increases quite a bit. Anyone with a question? ask the questions later, I guess.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
The-
So,
I'm sorry, Mr.
Dr.
Wilson.
Rios?
I wanted to just make a couple comments because at the end of the day, we do have to increase the insurance fund by about $1.8 million for this coming year. We still don't know what the state legislature is going to do in terms of aid for the districts. But right off the bat, we have $1.8 million to make up. There are some possibilities. For example, the board made some allocations from our fund balance to some of the projects that we have, but we still have some money. One option would be to dedicate $2 million to the health insurance fund as committed funds, and then Ms. Childress could move money over every month to cover a deficit. That's one option. That way, the budget that you have to work with for this coming year wouldn't be hurt too much in terms of projects or raises, compensation. That's one option. Another option would be where we dedicate $1 million from fund balance to committed funds for health insurance, and then again, Ms. Childress moves money over. At that point, we'd have to make up the difference, the other $800,000. So then the board could choose to make up the $800,000 by having the employee contributions at 10% or 17%, and then decrease the per employee contribution. That would again give you more flexibility. So we have these options and more, but again, we don't decide until the end of June, and hopefully by then we have some indication of what the state legislature is going to do. But I don't think that the scenario is bad at all given our financial stability. Now, unless the state doesn't come through with any money for teachers increases, then we'll be having a much different conversation. Okay.
Thank you for that explanation. I think the difficult thing for us is the fact that we don't know, what the funding will be at the state level. And then, for a couple of years now, I've been pretty much announcing that eventually it will come to raising the teacher contribution. Either, I think at one point, we thought like, okay, we might increase it for $25. Employee pay $25 share of employee insurance. At some point, it will come to that. The only thing is, it's so difficult for us to make a decision when we don't have the numbers from the 88th legislative session as far as funding, what it will look like. And pretty much everyone is in that predicament. So the discussion will continue, but be thinking of what you would like to, again, offer for our employees. And it seems like, when you look at the different scenarios, that's why I was asking which one looks more like the 17%, and the numbers remain pretty much the same. And again, take into consideration what Dr. Rios mentioned, that it's not for the employee itself, it's for the spouse and the family and the children. So, that we have to come to that decision pretty soon. What, another month or so? Dr. Rios?
Well, I hate saying this in public because I'll be the recipient of the criticism, but here's something that we have to consider. When the board approves us to cover the entire cost of the insurance, and if Ms. Webb and I, for example, are both employees of the district, and I have my entire family being covered, and Ms. Webb is employee only, so when the board chooses to cover all the increases for me and my family, in effect, you're giving me a higher pay raise than you're giving Ms. Webb, because you are contributing more to my family's health plan, and that's part of my compensation packet. That's why, and we've done that for the past 5 years. So for the past 5 years, everybody who has a family plan has in effect gotten a higher pay raise than somebody who's employee only. Does that make sense? You're contributing more to my entire benefits packet than you are to Ms. Webb's packet, simply because I have my whole family covered. And that's why I think it's important that we consider sharing the costs. If not at 10% or 17%, we really, honestly, I don't remember increasing the cost in more than 5 years. I don't know if Ms. Garcia or Ms. Childers may remember otherwise. I just don't remember ever doing that. So it's something that we do have to consider, that you all have to consider. You're the ones that are going to vote on it.
I think, for us, as we look at SLI, for example, you'll find that through the conversations, it's like very few districts offer 100% paid insurance for employees. They usually, it's 50-50 or something, some formula like that, but it's not 100%. And so, over the years, I've been preaching that it'll come to that at some point when we cannot afford that $2 million, that sometimes we're in deficit. We have the money for this year, but eventually it'll run out. So something has to be done to make sure that we cover. I'm trying to do everything that we can to help our employees, but again, it's a difficult decision for us because we don't know exactly what funding we will get from the state at this point. So, but we'll have plenty of conversations between now and June. Anyone else want to interject something? Then we'll adjourn the workshop and go on to our regular meeting. And the first report that we have is, we don't have any citizens to be here. Melissa? We don't have anyone? Okay. We have item 10 on our agenda, reports. Endocrinologist Telemedicine Services. Again, Mr. Colaway.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mesa. So this is something I'm really excited about. So we've done the things we can do to control the unit costs, meaning what are we actually paying for services? What are we paying for hospital costs? What are we paying for surgeries? What are we paying for drugs? We've done, not everything, but we've done a lot in that regard, from the contract the district signed with the local hospital to the opportunity for employees to travel a little bit, get surgeries and imaging at no cost, but at much lower price points, through what we're doing with the pharmacy benefit manager. And the next thing we can do is to start working on improving the health of people. And healthier people incur less cost, right? So if I look at all of your data, our estimate is that about 60 to 70% of the total cost of this health plan is directly related to diabetes. It's almost a pandemic in South Texas, not just in Del Rio, everywhere in South Texas. And it's an extremely expensive disease, from the complications, the heart attacks, the kidney failures, the amputations, all the things that go along with that. And one of the things that I have learned is that getting to an endocrinologist, which is the specialist that is highly trained to care for folks with diabetes, is extraordinarily difficult. Now, to my knowledge, there are none in Del Rio, and getting into the ones even in San Antonio is a very difficult proposition. They're that busy. There's only 5,000 to 6,000 endocrinologists in the country, and the population with diabetes is growing at a much faster rate than the number of docs to care for them. So I have come to know Dr. Arti Thangudu through a number of associations, and what Dr. Thangudu is doing and has demonstrated is the ability to, if not reverse diabetes, at least control the bad outcomes. And she does that by time. She is not a fee-for-service physician, meaning she doesn't have patients that come and see her and pay her an office visit. That's not how she works. She's developed a program where she meets with patients over about a 6-month program once a month, and then every other week with a health coach that is on her staff. She is board certified in endocrinology. Interestingly, she is an Indian woman but fluent in Spanish, and we're excited to implement this really as soon as we can get it pulled together. So here's where we are now. We tried to calculate the direct cost over the last 12, 14 months, and we know at least $1.9 million in hospital cost alone on your health plan are directly related to diabetes care. We believe at least a third of the claims, over 50,000, are related to diabetes. And in my conversations with Dr. Thangudu, it is extraordinarily difficult for folks to actually get to the proper care with an endocrinologist. And when they do, they get 5-7-minute visits. They have no lifestyle coaching, and this is a disease that is largely influenced by lifestyle, diet. Where we can go with this is we're confident we can reduce those hospital claims. That second bullet point on the right, she's working with a large health plan in San Antonio for the last 3 years. They have 205 diabetic patients. They have had 0 hospital claims for any of the folks that are working with her. There's no waiting times, there's no travel. She's doing all of this work through video conference. And I asked her about that, and she said, endocrinology is a specialty that really has no advantage to being hands-on with the patient. It's very lab value driven. So if I have access to see and talk to the patients and see their labs, I can perform my work. And so that means that your employees are no longer having to travel to San Antonio for this kind of care. There's no time off from work to do it. I am 100% convinced that we can create a healthier workforce. And yes, there are significant cost savings implications. I think the bigger issue is this can dramatically improve the lives of your staff that have diabetes, and that's just as important as the cost. So we're excited to start rolling this out in the next 30 days or so, and excited to see where this can go, because at the end of the day, if people are not getting healthier, our costs are going to continue to go up like everybody else's. But if we can make significant impact on the health of the folks that are driving the vast majority of our cost, then maybe we've gotten some good traction for progress. So that's just a report. We're excited to do it. I think your employees will embrace it. We're going to make this another no-cost option to the employees, meaning if they become a patient of Dr. Thangudu, they will have no cost for those visits with her or her health coaches. It's that significant that we don't want any barriers financially for these employees to actually see her and access the care that they need. So excited to see where this will take us. This is a long-term project. This is not one that you see results in the first 30, 60 days. We see results a year down the road. And it's one of those things where you say, well, we used to have this many hospital claims and this year we didn't. So it's difficult to necessarily prove ROI because it's difficult to prove a negative. But we have a lot of confidence in it and are excited to make this option available to your employees.
Sounds like a wonderful thing. Many years ago, we focused on the total wellness of the child, and even back then in middle school, when they have the darkening of the neck
Yeah.
and all these soft drinks that were available at schools, and so we're starting, we started the conversation. But I think it's a wonderful thing because, yes, there is a high rate percentage of diabetes in our state.
Yes, sir.
So it is a big issue, and it does lead to kidney failure and other issues, blindness, and I mean, all kinds of things. And so, by all means, this would be a wonderful thing. And the fact that it changes their lifestyle and they learn how to eat proper foods that will prevent, further decay of kidneys or whatever. But it's exciting to know that this is going to be offered to our employees.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Galindo.
Mr. Coldaway, again, this is a very good program. I see a lot of positive coming from it, and applaud y'all for bringing this. I just do have some questions, and maybe if Dr. Rios can maybe answer one when I get to that point. But we're talking about no waiting times or travel, no time off from work. Is she going to be seeing people after hours as well, or is this strictly 8 to 5?
That is a good question. I think she's flexible in that, but it'll generally be during office hours. But, if you can schedule it during a break or during a lunch or whatever, they're flexible to do that.
And do we offer an area for our employees on site or somewhere, or whether here at the SPC, for them to be able to do the telemed?
Yes, sir. When we started the telemed, we allocated a place at every campus,
Okay.
at every office where the employees could have some privacy. I know that we've been crushed for space, so we've been having to move the computer around, but we definitely provide that.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is, we're advertising no time off from work, but if she's not going to see them after 4 or 5, the employee can ask the question, well, when am I going to get a chance? Was the district offered me an opportunity to maybe do it during the day? And just want to make sure that if we're going to advertise that to our employees, we're also giving them the resource if we're going to advertise no time off from work. So that's why I was like, she's doing it after 5, I could see it. But if it's only 8 to 5, then an employee would have to put in an hour, to do something or half day just to see it. So technically they wouldn't be getting time off. But if we're offering the space for them, like Dr. Rios said, then I could see it working out very well for the employee. I just wanted to make sure we get that
Yes, sir.
fixed up.
Anyone else?
The-
Dr. Rios?
I know that Mr. Coldway has been aggressively looking at ways to reduce our health costs, and definitely he's had significant contributions in the last couple of years. But the reality is that we still need to be lower in the cost if we want to keep providing it at no cost. There's been a different strategy implemented every year since they've been with us. And for the last 2 years, we've been very successful. So hopefully this option to our employees that will affect about 300 employees will be another piece of it. Where we need to get to is we need to get to where we only increase the contribution in accordance with what the inflation rate is. So then we have to think of other aggressive measures to continue to decrease the cost. So this is one of them, Ms. Goldway, and I know that you probably have a couple more that you're going to take your time to roll out, but I would just prepare the board so that maybe in the coming month we talk about another option that it does create discomforts for our employees, but the reality is that if we increase our health increase by $100 per employee, or a contribution $100 to $150 per employee, we can't keep doing that every year. So since we don't want to ask our employees to contribute to their health plan, the only other way is to continue to provide the same service, but in a different manner. That always creates discomfort, because we're going to be asking our employees to go to a different doctor, or we're going to be asking our employees to take a different type of medicine. But unfortunately, we can't have it both ways. So this is great because it's not asking our employees to do anything different, it's just asking them to do something extra. But I think that in preparation for the coming year, we either increase the contribution by employee, every employee, or we ask every employee to do something different. And I'm not a voting member of the team of 8, but we definitely are going to have to do one or the other. And I think that it's incumbent upon administration to at least share with the board different options to increasing the employee's contribution. So maybe not before the budget is approved, but maybe in preparation for the January renewal, when we renew the policy, maybe we can discuss some different types of options for our employees. I'm just putting that out there, sir.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I think this is a wonderful thing because once they sign up for it and then receive the coaching and so forth, that'll be make a big difference in everything, savings as well as a life plan for healthier living.
Yes, sir.
So I want to thank you so much for
Okay.
your report.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Okay, next item we have is the consent agenda. Again, one action will approve all items on the consent agenda. There are some very important purchases, purchase orders, and other spending in areas that, again, you might want to look at. And if there's any question, if you'd like to pull any item out for additional discussion or questions, you may do so before we take action on this item. Any questions on consent agenda? I have one for Dr. Rios, and this is question for G2, consideration to approve a contract over $5,000 and a purchase order over $25,000 with Go Aero International LLC in the amount not to exceed $216,981. Funding source: committed funds for architectural services for redesign of Cody Wardlaw Gymnasium. This is just the redesign, architectural services.
Yes, correct.
The city will actually commit to some spending.
Yes, sir. The city already, Mr. President, members of the board, the city already approved the MOU. They already approved their commitment of $1.25 million. The city manager has signed the MOU, and we have the MOU with us. The timeline, however, is 6 months for the completion of the drawings. Therefore, we would not begin any type of construction or remodel until 6 months from tomorrow, which is when we would give ERO the go-ahead. But yes, sir, long answer to the yes, the city has already approved the commitment and they've signed the MOU.
So, again, everything will be taken into consideration regarding ramps for physically disabled citizens and so forth, restrooms and...
Yes, sir. The city would not approve the construction documents unless all the handicap accessibility features were provided.
Okay. Anyone else with any other question? Then I will ask for one motion to approve, if no further questions, to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Galindo, did you make a motion?
Motion.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Galindo, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries, and consent agenda is approved. We go on to administrative business. Let me see, we have item 12. Consideration to approve a board resolution authorizing the submission of the fiscal year 2023 Bullet Resistance Shield Grant. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, I'm presenting to you a consideration for the submission of a 2023 Bullet Resistance Shield Grant. The Office of the Governor, Public Safety Office, Criminal Justice Division issued out several opportunities for grant applications to law enforcement agencies across Texas. And our school district did review, our school police chief and I did review this, and we felt that this would be a great opportunity for our school district law enforcement. This particular grant application will equip peace officers with bullet-resistant shields. And the applications can be submitted by any law enforcement agency, including the school district law enforcement agency. And this application does require that the board approve a resolution and a cost match for the bullet-resistant shields. And this would equip all of our law enforcement officers.
Great. Any questions? This is a wonderful thing, of course. It's something that has been addressed and directed from the state level all the way down. And of course, applying for the grant is a way to be able to have the grant, the shield for our district here. So, by all means, anyone else with a question? If not, would you read the recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the board resolution authorizing the submission of the fiscal year 2023 bullet-resistant shield grant.
You've heard the recommendation. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Becky Chavez make the motion, seconded by Mr. Galindo. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12B, consideration to approve a board resolution to consider designation as District of Innovation. Sandra Hernandez.
Yes, sir. I am presenting to you a resolution for consideration from the board to restart our designation as a District of Innovation. Our District of Innovation is now expired. And so in informing the Texas Education Agency, they have asked us to go ahead and restart the process. And to restart the process, we will begin first with a board resolution. And this resolution for the District of Innovation, just to kind of inform the board, give a little bit of a background from the board, is that the District of Innovation allows the school district to request exemptions from the Texas Education Code in certain areas. For example, the school start date for certifications. And so we have, as a District of Innovation, used these two exemptions, and those exemptions have been favorable for our school district over the past 5 years. And so the initiation phase would be the resolution from the board for us to continue this process.
I guess everybody understands that we have been a District of Innovation. It's expired now, and we're starting the process to continue. Yes, Mr. Overfelt.
Just a quick question. I know there's a bill bouncing around in the House or the Senate that's aimed at restricting a lot of what we can do under District Innovation. And are we monitoring that? Because I know one of the big things is being able to start earlier in the year, and this particular bill would restrict that to like the fourth Monday of the year, like a normal district. So is TASB aware of that, or?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, TASB is carefully monitoring all of the bills that are out there that have been presented both by the House, and at this time we're just waiting and see. We cannot really act on that other than to proceed as TA has recommended to us to restart the process and to move forward with whatever statutes we are requesting to ask for either a modification of or an exemption to.
Dr. Rios?
Mr. Overfeld, if the legislature does do that, it would significantly affect our ability to have a long summer school program. This will be the first year that we get to enjoy the extra funding from the state, ADA funding for our students who go to the elementary summer school program. It would be, I guess, it would run counter to what TA has recommended, because TA mentioned that in order for us to overcome the loss of learning, that we have to help teachers plan better, which we're doing, and that we would have to increase the instructional year for our students, which, being a district of innovation, allows us to have those 30 days because we start 2 weeks earlier than what we used to. So we trust that if they do pass that bill, it won't take into effect until the following calendars adopted. But again, it would run counter to what the commissioner and TA has recommended. So we'll be vigilant and hopefully, from superintendent point of view, hopefully that would not pass.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Rios, for giving further explanation on that. With no further questions, would you read the recommendation, please?
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees to approve the resolution to initiate the process under the Education Code, Chapter 12A, to become a district of innovation.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Galindo, seconded by Mr. Orfeld. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just advise the board that it does require everyone's signature, so please don't leave.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next item we have is item 14, Technology and Operations. Consider 14A, consider and take possible action to approve the purchase of land near San Felipe Memorial Middle School, funding source, general funds, Israel Carrera.
Good evening, Board President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the school board. Currently, we own 3 out of the 4 properties directly northwest of the San Felipe Memorial Middle School gymnasium. In an effort to increase our campus safety and security, administration is now acquiring the 4th property, which is adjacent to the gym.
Yes, we received some information on the update, so I think most of us read it there. Any questions from board members? None? Hearing none, recommendation?
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the purchase as discussed and approve the board resolution to authorize the superintendent to negotiate and execute on behalf of San Felipe Del Rio CISD any and all necessary documents to complete the contract of purchase of the subject properties.
You've heard the recommendation. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
Next item we have is item 16, Human Resources. A, consideration to approve the conversion of a coordinator transportation vacancy to Del Rio Middle School 7th grade principal, Ade Garcia.
Good evening.
Dr. Rios?
Sorry, I know that we're going to rush off and close the board meeting after this item, so I don't want to lose the opportunity. I wanted to welcome back and introduce our Chief Innovation Officer, Dr. Sandy Zuniga Garza. So Sandy, welcome, glad to have you back. Thank you.
I didn't know you were already working, so I asked Dr. Rios and I was excited about it. Thank you so much for being here. Go on to the item now.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. As we consider restructuring the Del Rio Middle School to a 7th and 8th grade campus. We have a vacant position currently that is our transportation coordinator. So we would like to convert that position to a 7th grade, Del Rio Middle 7th grade principal.
Dr. Rios.
The reason we're bringing this today, Mr. Mesa, is rather than bring it at the end of the year when we would bring all new positions, is because we intend to recommend somebody during Monday's meeting and have that take effect immediately. I've visited with the board members in the past about going back to the model that we had to have a 7th and 8th grade principal. That's probably the time it worked the best. And we would be ready to make a recommendation on Monday. But before we recommend somebody, we need the position to be funded. That's why we're bringing this item today.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else with a question? Recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the conversion of transportation coordinator to Del Rio Middle School 7th grade principal.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Before we adjourn, just want to remind everyone that it's Mother's
Thank
Day,
you.
so make sure you buy a gift for your mom if you have your mom. There being no other items on the agenda, is there a motion for adjournment? Motion made by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.